For decades, America has tried to combat the harms of drug use primarily through banning drugs and incarcerating people who use them. But this has caused a violent underground market for drugs, increasing crime in our communities. It's caused contaminated substances, increasing overdose deaths, and it's caused incarceration to skyrocket, destabilizing families. What we're doing isn't working. Crime, death, and broken families are the collateral damage of using the criminal justice system to address the public health issue of drugs. If you're looking for a better path forward, you're in the right place. What if we changed our drug policies to prioritize life, health, harm reduction, and thriving? And what if it benefited all of us? Our criminal justice approach to drugs had a beginning, and it can have an end. Join us on the journey to end it for good. I'm Christina Dent, your host, and if you're new here, End It For Good is a nonprofit started in 2019, based in Mississippi, that invites people to support approaches to drugs that prioritize life and the opportunity to thrive. This podcast is one of the ways we do that. You can head over to episode 34 to hear my story as a conservative Christian foster mom, changing my own mind on the best path forward with drugs, and then come on back and dive in deeper. I didn't change my mind overnight, and most other people don't either. We all need time to learn, think, ask questions, and explore. Whatever your perspective is, I'm glad you're here. Let's journey together. Welcome back to the End It For Good podcast. I'm Christina Dent, your host. Really excited today to have a conversation on something that's happening right now here in Mississippi and also in a number of other states across the country. So we're just going to hop right into it. I am here with State Representative Sam Creekmore. He's the chair of the Public Health Committee in the Mississippi House of Representatives. So Representative Creekmore, welcome to the show.
Christina, thank you. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Well, we've been working on a couple of things because you are also speaking at Recovery Day at the Capitol next week. We just did an episode on Recovery Day, and we're really excited about that as well. But let's dive into Ibogaine. Ibogaine is a psychedelic that is being used and studied for a number of different health conditions, addiction, PTSD, traumatic brain injury, among others. So how did you get interested in Ibogaine?
Well, this whole journey started with mental health patients being put in jail and what can we do about it? And that's how really a few years ago when I was in the legislature, I kind of ran a task force to help prevent that and try to alleviate that issue, which led into addiction. And so mental health and addiction are so related, which led me down addiction trails and rabbit holes and what can we do? And the past session, I was working on the opioid grant council. As you recall, those opioid dollars are starting to flow out. And I was working on a Saturday in my office in New Albany, and I had my phone and was doing research on the council and creating the bill to do it. And my phone pinged, and I looked, and it was a podcast on Joe Rogan with a guy named Brian Hubbard and the former governor of Texas, Rick Perry. I said, well, I didn't know what it was about, so I just tapped it, and 3 minutes in was my introduction to Ibogaine. And those guys have done studies with it, they've researched it, and it was a 3-hour podcast. And 3 hours later, I set my opioid council down and was just captivated by this potential solution for so many issues that we have in our country. And so that's where I was introduced to it. Immediately reached out to Brian Hubbard, and he responded. And I was in my office at the Capitol that Monday, and he and I had a conversation. And the next thing I know, after session, I'm in Aspen, Colorado at the first ever Ibogaine conference in America. And so that's where it began. There are people a lot smarter than me. So I knew I needed some help to go with me. And I asked Dr. Thomas Ricor of the Department of Mental Health, he's also a veteran, to go with me. And just because you hear the results and how the potential of how incredible this drug can be for people who are in dire straits. And so I said, Dr. Ricor, I don't the results, what they say is incredible. You come with me and you tell me this is real. You look at the science, and in which he knew of Ibogaine anyway. And I'm telling you, after leaving that, and he became one of the superstars at that conference. I mean, people were relying on him for his testimony, his explanations of Ibogaine. But it's real. The results are incredible. It far exceeds any of the gold standards that we have right now in America as far as recovery and with recovery from withdrawals, PTSD, and it's being used, especially since the Rogan podcast, in our veteran communities. So many of our veterans suffering from PTSD. I mean, we've been at war for a long time, and it's taken a toll on so many Americans. And and so many resort to other methods of having to cope, and then the next thing you know, they're addicted, or and that on top of the PTSD or TBI, and then they're just in a world of hurt. And this is a method that can, many times after one use, one procedure, can totally reset your mind and make you whole. So that's a long story to begin where
I loved it. I remember the last session. I'm not often up at the Capitol, but I happened to see you one day, and you said, "Hey, what do you know about Ibogaine?" And I was like, "How do you know about Ibogaine?"
I know. Well, that was that next week, and just about, the Lord works in mysterious ways, and I mean, just for that phone to ping, and then you and I cross paths that next week, and then all of a sudden Ibogaine, there may be something to this. Christina knows about it. I need to continue down this journey.
Well, interestingly, we had just added Ibogaine to a new presentation that we were giving just in the last 2 months before I saw you at the Capitol. We had not given it in your part of the state. It was only here in the central part of the state, and you're up in the north part of Mississippi. And so I had just become much more familiar with it as part of preparing that presentation on innovative pathways to recovery. AA works for some people. It does not work for the vast majority of people who try it. And so what are we going to do? How are we going to continue to innovate in this addiction treatment space so that more people can find a path to recovery that works for them? So we had just developed a new presentation on multiple pathways to recovery, and psychedelic assisted therapy was one of those. Ibogaine was one of those. So it really does feel like just this really amazing kind of the rivers converging, or the streams converging into a river, as more and more people are seeing that there not only are there opportunities for new forms of treatment, but there are types of treatment like Ibogaine that can be incredibly effective in an incredibly short amount of time. And if you have ever walked with somebody that has struggled with addiction or PTSD, shortening that window of suffering and struggle doesn't just impact one person. It impacts a whole family community. And that's a really big deal if we can find things that provide more healing faster for people. And Ibogaine is doing that for not everyone, but a lot of people.
And Ibogaine, I'll like to tell you about the hearing in a little bit, but Ibogaine is not to replace any of our methods that we're using now or any of our medicines. And it's not a first resort. And really, it's kind of a last resort after you've tried many of the other methods and still have not succeeded. Then it's time to take a look at Ibogaine. And it, as you mentioned, after one procedure, which is not fun, and it can take 24 to 48 hours, and there's some prep time before. And there's also, you have to have the proper heart condition. You have to have a strong heart. There are some issues that could happen with your heart palpitations. Kind of, it affects it during the procedure. So, but all that testing is done prior to. So, if we can get this, and the idea with the bill is to have the FDA trials here in Mississippi. Currently, Ibogaine's a Schedule I drug in America, and So it cannot be used. And Schedule 1 they have to be highly addictive and have no medical value. Ibogaine clearly has medical value, according to all the studies I've seen. And then from what I've seen, it's not addictive. You don't, many times
Now,
these procedures they're not fun. You don't want to go through that again.
yeah.
So I think there's a real chance that it can be moved from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. It has to be administered in a hospital or clinical setting with doctors and nurses constantly monitoring you. And again, you have to be tested just to be sure you're healthy enough to go through this procedure. So it's a serious procedure, a serious drug, but the results. And again, this is not in America studies, but FDA trials. Stanford University did studies on veterans, and 80 to 90% had complete withdrawals after the procedure and have lasted, up to a year. But more studies need to be done. And so many of our veterans, and that's where we're getting a lot of the support. Well, we're getting support from everyone, but a lot of our veterans, even Mississippi veterans, are going to Mexico or out of the country to receive this treatment, to be made whole. And just as you mentioned, it doesn't just affect one person, it affects families. And so we thought it would be good to have a hearing and bring some of these people. These are real Mississippians, and let the public, let legislators meet these people that are walking our streets, that have families who've been through these traumatic circumstances and then have struggled mentally and with addiction. And it wasn't just veterans that we brought in. We brought in people who've been through child abuse. We brought in a nurse who, through her traumatic issues with nurses, turned to substance abuse. And all these people were helped through Ibogaine. They'd been through other treatments, been through therapies, and it reached, some had become even suicidal. And it reached a point of no return, they thought, and then they sought help in some people that directed them toward Ibogaine. And so that's when you meet these people that look just like me and you and realize what they've been through, and that they feel like they have nowhere else to go. It was just a very, very powerful hearing and testimonies that we heard. So, my plan, I'm not sure when you're airing this, but the bill's ready. There's a bill in the Senate. I've had great support in the legislature about this. The military's been great. Veteran groups have been great. The addiction space has been great to me. You've been great. So I think we've got a lot of momentum. And there's a chance that even Marcus Luttrell, who the lone survivor, great war hero for America, he wants to come to Mississippi and help promote this bill. So we've got a lot of momentum, and I'd like to see this through. But the main goal is, if we can get this passed, our Mississippians will not have to go out of state. They can receive treatments here in Jackson that can potentially make their lives whole again.
Yeah. I love that that kind of vision for being able to access something closer to home. People could say, well, if they want some kind of novel treatment, they can pay to go to Mexico. Well, that not everybody can pay to go travel out of the country, stay for whatever period of time they need to prep for the treatment, to have some time to integrate after the treatment. I mean, that is significant cost. And a lot of people can't do that. Most of us can't just pick up and, take off a week or 2 or 3 or however long we need, and go out of the country and live somewhere for a couple of weeks. And so bringing that closer to home, where, just like you said, I think that's such an important point. This is not for everyone. This is not, hey, I think I might have a problem with an addiction. Let me try Ibogaine. This is a really, really difficult treatment to go through. Not everybody is a good candidate for it, either whether that be physically related to you need to be screened to be sure that you're in a good cardiac place for it, but also mentally and emotionally. It is not for everyone, and there's good clinics are going to screen for that. If you are not prepared for this type of mental and emotional journey, then it is not going to be helpful for you to go through that. So I think that's an important point too.
Very important. You're exactly right. One of the people that testified from Mississippi, from the Mississippi Deltas, she will not mind me saying it, was Claire Durst, who now works for Ibogaine for America, but she's considering open up, even if we can't get the treatments in Mississippi, but open up some clinics to help people prepare in their hometown or close to home for that journey, because you have to be clean. I don't know how many days before, and there's a lot of mental prep and to get ready for this. It's a very serious procedure.
Yeah, absolutely. But for a lot of people, they are at the end of the line on treatment. You hear so many people say, we've sent my loved one through treatment, 5, 6, 10 times, and they're still not sober. Something is not working about the treatment that they're going to. Ibogaine really forces you to deal with the things that are deep inside, and people can skirt that in traditional treatment if they just don't want to participate and aren't ready. And Ibogaine sort of brings you there. And so that's why the prep for it and the integration work after it is so important. And Claire has made just a great point of that also, that it's not just the treatment that is so profound, it is helping you integrate what you learned during that treatment process into your life. And that's what can help to kind of help you make that really significant life change that a lot of people find after going through Ibogaine, that it's a pretty life changing event for them. So what do you hope, as we wrap up, what do you hope in 10, 15, 20 years from now in Mississippi?
100%.
What is your hope?
Things change so fast around here. I think my hope would be that everybody's living their potential life that the Lord made for them, and that's my hope, including myself. There's just so much more we can do, and so much more we can give back to Mississippi, and that's what I hope. And that that's a dream I'm just going to keep chasing and keep working on myself as well.
Yeah, all of us are on a journey that needs healing. So whether that journey includes something like Ibogaine or whether it includes other things, we're all on that journey in some way. So thank you.
I do want to say, we're Texas has passed this and put $50 million into it, and so we modeled the legislation very similar to Texas. And in the legislation, it passed as is, we would be able to partner with Texas and share an FDA trial and share information. And I think that's important. And that's kind of what all of us talking about recovery are on this journey of some type of recovery, and to be able to share resources and get the most out of our money. Because these are tax dollars, or in our case, could be potential opioid settlement dollars that we're going to use. Let's use them to do something profound. And let's be one of the first in our country. Let's be a leader in our country in this space. So that's another part of my dream, but I'm hoping that doesn't take 15 years. I hope it takes 1 year.
Yes, we have an opportunity. Well, thank you so much for joining us, for talking about the bill. The bill is on the legislative website in Mississippi. If you're not someone who's used to reading bills, that may not be very helpful, but it basically is bringing Mississippi into this movement to have Ibogaine go through phase 1 clinical trials that would be FDA appropriate, and to begin that process of potentially moving Ibogaine from a Schedule I drug into a substance that can be used for medical purposes here in the United States. So that would be a huge when, and that is the next step in bringing access to this in a medically supervised setting for people who need it right here in the United States, and for Representative Creekmore and I right here in Mississippi where we live. So thank you so much for joining us. This has been fun. Thank you for your service to the state and the people of your community, and to the whole state as you lead the Public Health Committee. We really appreciate
Thank you, Christina, for all you do and always for the support.
Thanks for listening to the End It for Good podcast, and we'll be back with more. So how do we shift our drug policies from a criminal justice approach to a public health approach? By inviting one person at a time to change their mind. Changed minds are the catalyst to changed laws. But many people are only willing to have this conversation when they're invited to by someone that they trust. That's you. Invite your friends, coworkers, other people in your circle of influence to consider a better way. At End It for Good, our hope is that people who hear will become people who tell. Start a conversation and join the movement to end it for good.